Hello everybody, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Janice, Travel with Janice. If this is your first time watching my videos, I make videos on teaching abroad and more specifically how you can teach in South Korea, which is where I'm based at the moment. In today's video, I will be talking to you about my experience as a high school teacher. So when I was doing research on teaching in Korea, I found a lot of videos on teaching elementary and middle school, which is what a lot of people said, that you most likely will end up being a elementary or a middle school teacher, that high school positions are far and in between. So I kind of was prepared to teach middle or elementary school students, and I was really shocked and surprised and overwhelmed and nervous when I finally received my placement at orientation, and I found out that I was going to teach at an all-girls high school. This video, I'm just going to go over some things that you can expect as a high school teacher, and hopefully this will just calm your nerves so you are not as ill prepared as I was. You might still, I think there's a lot more positions that are, a lot more teachers that are now being placed at high schools, so just be aware of that. Although majority of teachers will either go to elementary or middle school, high school is becoming a little more popular, I'd say, these days. So the first thing I want to mention to you is, once students enter Korean high school, they eat, sleep, breathe studying. Okay, so the 3 years that they are in high school, they are preparing for a test that's known as the Sunong, and this is like the equivalent of a SAT, like an American SAT exam. Now this test carries a lot of weight because it determines their future. It determines the college or the university that they attend after high school. So the test is really important. Okay, so they also take this test on in their last year of high school, so what we would call matric. And this test is so big that in Korea, on the day of the Sunong, there are no other students at the school. So the grade 10s and the grade 11s of that school all have to stay at home and get taught online. Also, airplanes aren't allowed to fly anywhere in the country during the English listening portion of the test. So if you are teaching high school, sometimes you can feel the tension and the atmosphere in the school. So be mindful that your students will most likely be stressed out most of the time. So your job is to calm their nerves, make the learning environment as fun and as engaging, just to help them not be so stressed out. Okay, so that's number one. You will feel the tension in the atmosphere most of the time. Okay, now there are two different types of high school that I want to talk to you about today. The first one is a technical high school. So this that you might be placed at. So number one, a technical high school is for students that do not intend to go to college or university after school, and the other is just a regular high school. So with a regular high school, you will either be placed in an all-girls high school, which is where I'm at, or all-boys high school, or a co-ed school, which just means it's both boys and girls. I can only speak from the experience of an all-girls high school because that's where I teach at, and I only have one school that I teach at. And my experience teaching all girls has been really fun. I think I have the loveliest students. Granted, they are very stressed and expect them to be sleeping in your class a lot of the time. Okay, now I'm going to mention some general stuff that to keep in mind when you are going to be a high school teacher. First thing, I'm going to talk about the working hours. However, I just want to make a quick disclaimer. This is only based on my experience. Yours might vary, so just keep that in mind. Number one, the working hours will probably run, for me, I work from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. with my classes. My classes run for about 50 minutes. I know that sounds like a lot, but once you get into the swing of it, those 50 minutes go by really quickly. So don't let that stress you out. It will go by really quickly, I promise you. And then with Epik, we are contractually contractually allowed to teach for 22 hours per week. My specific schedule, I teach for 16 hours a week, which is at most 4 classes per day. Some days I only have 2 teaching classes. And the times where I'm not teaching, I am sitting at my desk lesson planning for the next week. So I have a lot of downtime as well. So just bear that in mind. With Epik, you are going to teach for 22 hours per week, and that is the cap. Some of you might teach for less. Like me, I'm only teaching 16 hours a week. And like I said, my classes run for 50 minutes. In my classroom, you will either have a textbook that you teach from, and you and your co-teacher will split the lesson maybe 50-50, and she teaches part of the textbook and then you come in and play some games. Or in my situation, I have the entire class, the entire lesson to myself, so in which I have the freedom to teach what I want. So I'm just there to encourage or help students speak more in class, so that they're just more comfortable speaking English in the classroom setting. So usually I have to make my own lessons, and what I found helpful is project-based lessons, because they run for maybe 3 or 4 weeks, and I'm not scrambling every week just trying to come up with something new and interesting and fun. I found that project-based lessons work for me and my students, because it just builds like a routine and something that I can carry on the next week and the next week and so forth. So I really enjoy them. And after 5 p.m, your students will most likely either go to a Hogwarn, a private academy, or they will stay at school and have after school programs, and in which they have dinner at school in the cafeteria, and then go to their study rooms and study until 10 or 11 p.m. That's why I'm saying that your students really don't have a lot of time to sleep, so they use the opportunity to sleep sometimes in your class. They do bring blankets and pillows to school in the classroom and will sleep. Like for me, in my case, maybe 1 or 2 students are sleeping. For the most part, they are good. They will try and engage. And yeah, so just don't let the sleeping students, don't take it personally. It's not a reflection on you and your teaching. They are just really tired. The next thing I want to talk about is the actual workload. So with being a high school teacher, you will work a lot more. There are not that many lessons or resources for high school teachers available to use online. At the end of the video, I will give you some resources and sites that I find helpful to start a lesson and then just come up with my own games, or I find games and then just incorporate that into my lesson plans. So just bear in mind that you will have to do a lot more work, because there aren't that many resources or teaching materials for high school teachers. The next thing I want to mention is that high school students' English level is much higher than the younger grades. This is an advantage for me. You can easily have a full conversation with most of your students. And the higher level students are great at translating whatever you've said. So oftentimes I feel like I don't even need my co-teacher's help, because the higher level students are there to translate if that's the case. But for the most part, if you have a PowerPoint presentation and you type out instructions to the game, 95% of students can read the instructions and will be able to carry out the task. So I think that's a very nice thing about teaching high school, is their English levels are much higher. You can have a full-on conversation with them, which is great. Okay, now I want to talk about behavior in the classroom. I found that for me, and in my case, in my experience, my girls aren't really bad behaved. Yes, they can get chatty, but usually when I'm teaching, other students, like the English class captains, will call the students to order. They're usually very good at checking one another. Yes, they can be chatty, but it's never disrespectful. In my case, I've never been felt disrespected or be ill-treated. So discipline is very good, at least at my school. So like I mentioned, do expect students to sleep inside the classroom. Do not take it personally. It's not a reflection on you as a teacher. I think the first year is trial and error. I'm still learning a lot of ways to teach and what works, what doesn't. So don't be discouraged along the way. I'm still figuring it out. I think after the first year, that's when you finally like find your feet. There will be a good support system for you once you get here. So don't worry about not knowing what to do. As soon as you get here, you can join a high school English group where there are tons of people there to give you advice, point you in the right direction when it comes to lesson plans. And yeah, so the next thing I want to talk to you about is the resources that I've used that I found very helpful. So the first site that I want to mention is Waygook. So that's waygook.org. Maybe I can leave it on the screen somewhere for you. For this site, you do have to pay to download lesson plans and ideas, but I don't pay for it, so I can't really speak on if it's worth it or not. The next site is coreshare.org, also a very popular one in Korea, and this is fantastic and it has free lessons. I use this quite often. The next site is Teach This. This also is for lesson plans, games, lesson plans and games. TasteTeachingToolkit.com. This is a great site for games. I absolutely love it. She's so good at making PPT games. Like, PPT games are my go-to, and I use Taste Teaching Toolkit for my PPT games. And then for worksheets, I use ISL Collective, and they have tons of materials. I've also recently got into, I forgot the site's name. If I remember, I will add it for you on the screen. So I think that's it when it comes to teaching high school. If you have any more questions about teaching high school, please leave them down below. Yes, lastly, just don't be overwhelmed. You can do this. It's going to be okay. Teaching high school is not that bad. In my opinion, I absolutely love it. I don't think that I would have had energy for elementary students. I love that I can have conversations with my girls. They are always putting me on the latest kind of music. They are so intelligent and so funny. Like, I constantly am learning from them as well. So that's something that I really appreciate. And yes, I have a good support system at my school. I have co-teachers that are really helpful, that I can speak to when I am stuck or don't know what to do. So hopefully that will be your experience as well. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye.